So, Sabine, you've always been an excellent note taker.
Oh, you're sure?
I'm sure. How about it?
Yeah, if somebody can take the relay when I'm presenting.
Sure. Who can take over for Sabine while she's presenting? You can do it, Richard?
Oh, that's volunteer. Or I'll take notes from you stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
So you're going to take notes while she presents, and then she's going to take notes for the rest. Great.
Sure.
And both of you just send me your notes after the session. The last times it was Vijay and I just really quickly looked over them and we just uploaded them. It's, I think, personally, I honestly think the notes are not as important anymore as they used to be because we have the Meet Echo recording of the whole session anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there used to be an IETF time where the minutes were what people who were not there would read, but now they can also listen to the recording. So, thank you, Sabine. Is anybody in Jabber? Do we use Jabber anymore, or is everything going via Meet Echo? Ah, Mirja knows these things. Mirja, do we still need a Jabber scribe because we have Meet Echo and people can comment in Meet Echo if they have a remote issue, right?
Yeah, but it's good to have somebody, so if somebody can't go on video, audio, whatever, you can still relay. Like
Yeah, but they can chat in Meet Echo, right? They can send me a chat.
not in this window. No,
Okay.
you need somebody else to watch this chat.
Okay, can somebody watch the chat? Is that the Meet Echo chat or a Jabber chat?
It's the same.
Okay, can somebody do that? So the issue is we need somebody to watch. You can do it? Great, thanks. We have note takers already, so I think we're good. And if somebody is there, just, yeah. So we should pass around the blue cheese. Yes. Oh, I should put it. So I think we can start. I think we're it's about time. So can you hear me? Is this mic on? All right. So welcome everybody. My name is Jan Seedorf. I'm chairing this session here. This is the ALTO working group, application layer traffic optimization. My co-chair Vijay unfortunately could not make it to this meeting. I'll talk about this later, I guess, but we have high hopes that he can chair a session in Montreal at the next IETF, so we will also have a physical session there. Yeah, so welcome. I guess everybody knows the node well. Basically, this means there are certain rules in the IETF, and you have to follow them. If you don't know them, I'm not going to read all of them right here. Please check them out. There are certain IPR rules. If you are aware of any IPR, you need to say so, and so forth. So I just want to make everybody aware that we are under certain rules here, and that basically the rules are full transparency. Yeah, this is actually, I've reviewed the slide from the last time I chaired this session here, and this has not changed. I think we're making good progress, but the main focus of our working group is finishing the charter items. And Vijay and I have been very strict about this. We are not opening any new items until we have finished the working group items, and I think the working group agrees that we have been very strict. The agenda, which I'm going to present in a minute, has been set up accordingly, so we are really going to focus on the working group items. And yeah, we want to finish our milestones as soon as possible, and it has taken a while, but I do think we're making good progress. And partly it's also because we found some dependencies. Richard is going to talk about that. And that was, you know, what can you do if you find a dependency? You need to think it through. So I do think that people really are working hard on the working group items and finishing them. So yes, let's look at the agenda. So basically, yeah, we have on the main working group items that we still have open, we each have a presentation on them. I think the only one where we don't have a presentation is the performance metrics. And I'm going to have a comment about that, and Sabine, maybe you can just briefly update us. But on all the other working group items, we have a presentation, and I think we're going to see then how the progress is. But we still allowed individual presentations. So we have at the end of the agenda 3 individual presentations that we are certainly happy to discuss. But as I said before, Vijay and I will not accept any new working group items until we have finished our milestones. And then we really need to think about rechartering, and probably other people need to chair the working group if we do so. And this is also what we've agreed to do, right? So basically these 3 presentations are certainly interesting and we're happy to discuss them. but we will not discuss adopting any of these. So is there any agenda bashing? Anybody wants to comment on the agenda? Anything that we forgot? Everybody's happy? Okay. So progress. Yeah, we had the last meeting in Montreal. I was not there. Vijay was there, chaired it. We had a virtual interim in December where we had basically discussions on a lot of dependencies and progress on the individual documents. So we are meeting quite frequently. The interim was basically instead of meeting physically at the Bangkok IETF. So general status, we have one more out of the working group, one more document. The cross-domain discovery is an Ies G processing. Sebastian is not here. He could tell us there are certain discussions they're having, but we're not going to discuss this today. It's in the Ies G, and they have raised some questions, again, I think also regarding the security section. But we hope that this will move forward. We have then, as I said, multiple working group items, which we as chairs believe are all close to being finalized. Let's see today if we can send some more out. Some of them have actually been through working group last call twice already. I'm thinking about cost calendar and so we can move some of them hopefully ahead to the Ies G. So we have presentations, so just a brief summary of our working group items and milestones. Cross-domain server discovery, as I said, is under Ies G evaluation. We're not going to discuss it. Cost calendar, we just had an email from Vijay, my co-chair today. We have finished our second working group last call. The authors have addressed the issues. Vijay just checked it today. And he sent an email out on the mailing list today. If you saw that he thinks it's ready, he just gave some minor pointers on mostly text, some typos and stuff. And Sabine, who's in the room, basically confirmed today in the email she's going to address these issues, and then we're going to have a new version after the IETF, and then hopefully we can send that one directly out. So we're not going to, so we're pretty much done with that one. CDN FCI, we have a new version published. It's moving forward, and we hope it's going to be ready soon. Jensen is going to present remotely, so I'm not going to. Richard is going to present. Okay. So we have a presentation, so I'm not going to say much further. The same goes for SSE. For that one, we actually had a working group last call, and the authors have addressed this document. We as chairs think it's well polished, and the comments have been addressed. Richard is going to present today. So that one is another one we actually had already a working group last call, so we're close to being done. Now coming to a little bit more complicated things, unified properties and path vector, they're making good progress. We have new versions out, but there have been dependencies. And Richard, you're going to update us on that. But we hope that we can also then, I think they're resolved. You will talk about it. But of course, we want to move these to working group last call soon. So we're going to ask for detailed reviews then. That's a quick summary from the chair perspective. Is there any other business? Did I forget anything? Oh, yeah, so, okay.
Hi, Tim Jones. I only sort of very loosely follow this group. Is there any quick comment you can make about implementations of these, this work? Yeah,
so as far as I know, there are multiple implementations. There have been presentations here from people who do Alto server for Deutsche Telekom. We have presentations from people that do the Alto server for Sprint. Richard, you have multiple. You have an implementation going on. Maybe you can comment. You can comment.
Is there sort of like a page with a list of implementations? Is there something I can
we
turn
don't
to?
have that, unfortunately. So I would need to dig through over the years. We had multiple presentations here from actual implementers, but we don't have today, and I don't think we have an overview page for that.
It would be a useful thing to have.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, one thing you can certainly do is you can raise that question on the mailing list, and I'm sure people will reply immediately and send you pointers. So that will. I'm very positive that people will reply soon. So just raise that issue on the mailing list. But Richard,
sure. Yeah, I think that's a wonderful question. And we had an auto survey document from last IETF, but of course we were not pursuing it. For that small document, and we do have a long list of all the implementations and deployments and all the citations, but they were not pursued at this moment, and that's wonderful. So we'll definitely, I think that's a suggestion which we probably should polish it. We should really update it. We'll do that. That's a wonderful suggestion.
Right, and it's a good point. I mean, in the IETF, we're always very keen on implementations. It's important. So yeah, just raise it on the mailing list. I think people will reply. One more comment? I mean, go to the mic if you have one more comment.
So Sabine from Nokia,
As a note taker, may I ask people to take the time to articulate their name and
Yes.
affiliation? Thank
Yes.
you.
Just can I use this chance to really, because related,
Yeah.
and multiple people of us, and of course I'm from Yale, Sabine from Nokia, and Boris from Ericsson, and we have people from Luis from Telefonica, we have people from AT&T, and we have people from Tencent. We have quite a few people. Of course, we have Danny from. So we have these regular weekly meetings every Wednesday. What time? I forgot. Tuesday.
Every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday.
Again.
Because he organizes. I just spoke.
Yes. Actually, related to the Richard's comment is that we have a frequently weekly meeting all Wednesday, 10 a.m. US time, US Coast time, and please feel free to join us.
Yeah, has that meeting been announced on the mailing list?
No, we don't. Somehow we feel that given that you mentioned, we realize we're mostly running is more like maybe 10, 15-ish people every week.
Okay.
Do you recommend we send this one to the mailing list? So
I guess so, because
participate?
people have been asking, and otherwise to arrange it individually, why don't you just announce it on the mailing list that if somebody is interested, he should contact whoever.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. We'll do that. I think both Boris and we see all these people. Yes, we'll be more than happy. We are not trying to be close. We're just mostly just core people around 10, 15, maybe 15, 20 people-ish.
Okay, cool. All right, it seems there's no other business. I'm looking at Meet Echo. No. So that basically means we can start with our first presentation. And I'm quickly looking at the agenda, but I think it's Sabine, right? Let me quickly have a look. Yeah, so Sabine, you're up on cost calendar. I can give you the click thing. Let me just find your slides. Cost calendar. So, try it.
So this is two points.
Yeah, we need to point that this is one. Yeah, try that. Try the right button. Yeah, so it works. Right. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so hello, this is about the progress on the Alto Coast calendar draft. There was a first Ies G review last December. So the review had 2 discuss points, but it had also enough positions to pass once the discuss points are addressed. There was one discuss which was related to the design with 2 questions, one on the format of a given field that could cause passing errors, and the other one was like a question about some contradiction between calendars of long duration and what happens if the actual values are changing, how can the client know. The other discuss point was more about the IPR declaration. That has been solved immediately. And so upon this decision, our area director recommended that because we had to submit a new version following the second discussion point, so we just decided to address all the review comments. So this presentation therefore focuses on discussion number 1. Okay, so the current version of the draft is active. So it went back to the working group at least. So there was a new version 10 that has been submitted in February and addresses all the first Ies G review comments. And then the second working group last call ended in February 25th. And there is now a new version. So this is the current version. And basically, it addresses like errors in JSON examples and also check the correctness of the provided example. So this presentation is focusing therefore on V10. So basically the highlights are on the updates. So you have updates on the design to address the discussion points. So we revised the format of that field time interval size, and also address the issue of calendars with long duration and changing values. We also referred references to RFC, and that was not like a minor addition because it was also taking into account the RFCs that were followed by the base protocol and that are now obsoleted. So there was many clarification text that was added, and section 412, which is actually the core section of the document because it describes Alto server responses with calendars. So that has been reorganized. And so we added editorial corrections on several formats and units and time zones. Okay, so as for the first design change, so in the attributes that describe a calendar, you have a member that is called time interval size that describes how long each time interval lasts. So it used to be encoded in a string composed as follows, so one number and one string that was describing the time units. And the first drawback was that it could cause parsing errors. Actually, this design was inspired from how constraints on costs are expressed in the base protocol. They are also expressed as a string where you have like GT0 or LT0. And so we took inspiration from that one, but actually we agree and we found an easy way to solve it. So, so the solution is as follows. So the new format is as here, as described here. So the value of the time unit is implicitly a second. So it's defined, it's specified in the document.
So just to be clear, so basically you're not directly following the suggestion, you're not introducing two separate fields, you're saying we keep one, but it's implicitly clear it's always seconds.
Yes,
all right.
yes.
I think it solves the issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the document specifies that it has to be a second. And so you just enter here a JSON number that gives the number of seconds, and provided that it is required that the servers, same as in the base protocol, they support IEEE 754, double precision floating point. And so, for example, instead of 1 hour, you just have 3,600. So, and that pretty covers all the desired time duration ranges. So this is a short example, again, in the IRD of how the attributes that describe a calendar are encoded. Yes, and the other discussion item was about the attribute repeated. So the attribute repeated in a calendar response is a number that tells you, okay, I give you a calendar and these values are good for the next n duration. If I have attribute repeated is equal to 10, for the next 10 periods, it's the same values. And the question was, well, that implicitly prohibits that a server modifies the value until the number of repetition has elapsed. So what happens if there is an actual change in the values? So all the questions here are listed here. So I will not read it all. I just leave it here for those who are willing to read the slides after the presentation so that there is documentation. So the solution has been to add and specify things in several sections of the document. Excuse me. Okay, in section 2, in the overview, that section now explains that a calendar can be used as a timetable, but like any timetable or schedule, you cannot predict unexpected events by definition. So it's just like a train table. If something happens, you cannot predict it. But at least you can figure out when you want to reserve your seat. So this section recommends that any server supporting calendars also support the incremental update service. And likewise, every client that uses calendar as well supports and uses that SSC, that incremental update service. This way, you can just get your calendars, and when something happens, you know it as a client. So this has been written in section 2. This text has been, of course, repeated in section 6 on security, because also the security addresses the issue of what happens if unexpected values are changing. And in section 7, operational. Why? Because in that section 7, the document tells how convenient it can be to use that repeated, because it saves lots, it can save transactions. So we repeated this again. In section 4.1.2, we added a paragraph that explains that a server can update a repeated value, repeated calendar once the number of repetition has elapsed, or in case of unexpected value change. So this change can be retrieved by via incremental updates. And the text also addressed actually another comment that was raised and with the question, so how do you deal with like infinite calendar duration? So the response is, well, you give a high number of repetition, and once that time is elapsed, you just update your calendar, the server. So they discussed too, I won't be long about it because that has been solved. So additionally to these design changes, we also updated references of the RFCs that are used, the other RFCs that are used in this document. So the JSON format now follows RFC 8259. So the JSON format used in the base protocol used to be 7159, but it is obsoleted by this version. Oh, sorry. That mandates actually UTF-8 to encode text. And this for a very good reason of guaranteeing a better interoperability. So this has been considered a reasonable reason to stick to the new version. And so there has been a discussion among the area directors and also in the working group. So the draft now uses the newer version of JSON encoding. And the ALTO-VG has been required to identify the extension that use UTF-16 or 32 or any format that is not supported by this new JSON RFC. So up to now, we did not identify such extensions. And so a second update with respect to RFC is about the time zone that is used in the document. It's now UTC according to RFC 1731, given that it still displays GMT. The timestamps still display GMT. Okay, so now as for other updates, so there has been a substantial change in section 4.1.2, but this is this has nothing to do with the design. This is just to clarify it, because it seems that it was carrying lots of, it was kind of hard to follow. So we hopefully reorganized this section to distinguish in responses what members are specific to multicast and not multicast, whether they support calendar or not, what has to be in the response. So, and this is also in this section, we also better stress the fact that the attributes that are conveyed in the responses mostly already appear in the IRD. So, and there has been other updates on examples, formats, errors. Hopefully everyone, every error has been catched, and also many valuable guidance from the reviewers regarding the clear wording.
Is this your last slide?
No, this is a recap of the Ies G feedback. So each time we are addressing Ies G review comment feedback, I was submitting them to the person reviewer who was issuing that comment, and they were agreed mostly, and we are waiting for the feedback of the art area. And as a conclusion, so again, great thanks for all this received feedback and guidance. And the next steps, we will post as soon as possible a revision upon Vijay's feedback. Thank you, Vijay. And then we will be waiting for the AD feedback and hopefully a second ISG review.
Mayor Kulevin, thank you for all these edits. So on the processing part, we will also have to run another IETF last call, just like because that's a process, right? And then I will put it on a returning item on the telechat, and I wouldn't expect to see any further comments. So hopefully everything should be cleared now. I have a quick question. Remind me, there was a discussion about if you use a new JSON format, that you might also update the base ALTO protocol, so like that this document would update RFC 7285, right? What was the resolution of that question?
Well, the resolution was, actually addressed here.
Maybe as far as I understood it, but Sabine, correct me if I'm wrong, this new document will require the new JSON format regarding RFC 8259, and it's up to the working group to update the the core ALTO protocol, because, well, that's an RFC and it doesn't require the new JSON format because it was not out there, right? So I guess it's tricky because we now have an extension that requires,
It's tricky. So what you could do also, it's a little bit strange, you could also just use this document to update this one specific point in the ALTO base spec.
Then again, I don't understand why it's tricky, because everybody who wants to implement this extension has to follow the new JSON format, and if they're smart, then they also use it for where they have it already implemented if the core ALTO protocol gets updated, right? It's not...
So,
Sabine, maybe you can comment. Did the ISG say anything regarding this, or did you just introduce this? Was this introduced after the ISG comments?
That was upon ISG feedback.
Yeah.
Because somebody asked to reference the new version of JSON, or that's a new version. But then I realized that the older one was used in the base protocol. And the issue discussed in the working group was, do we have any documents that really kind of where the specification and the implementation is tied to like UTF 16 or 32 or any other format? And actually we did not yet identify. And yes, we'll be happy to have your guidance as well. For the moment we said, okay, no document is tied to a format that is not anymore valid, so we just do nothing.
Right, I think that's what I was trying to say. If somebody has a core ALTO implementation, he can use UTF-8 regarding to the core, it still adheres to the core alto specification, right? So if somebody implements this extension and switches everything to UTF-8, there's no there's no violation of RFC 7285, the core alto protocol.
Okay, so
as far as I understand it.
Yeah, so that's also like I don't know all the details about JSON, so that's
Right.
why I'm asking this.
No,
So
but
you're saying like if I have an implementation that's based on a new JSON specification and I talk to a server that has the old JSON specification implemented, there shouldn't be any problem, right?
well, it's not that I didn't say that. I said
Okay.
if
But
you.
okay, then that's my question.
I think, as far as I understand it, the new RFC 8259 says you have to use UTF-8. And the core alto protocol says you can use UTF-8 or 16 or 32. If now this extension says we also only allow UTF-8, it's not necessarily a problem because everybody who implements this extension will have to use UTF-8, and if that implementer is clever, he will also use it for his core alto implementation, and then there is no issue. But I think we can stop this discussion because the Ies G has commented, and we'll go back to the Ies G, and there are the JSON experts who should check. We think now we are in line. You still have questions, Mirja? I wasn't clear. Okay.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Can I ask a question? I believe this issue wouldn't apply to auto only. I presume this would be a common issue, for example, to CDNI. A lot of documents are really using generic UTF. For example, most of base protocol, we like a PID or identifier, we really were explicit. You can only use UTF-8 for a very small subset because we're trying to control the. But we do have, for example, like a comments, descriptions, we just whatever JSON string is totally legitimate to us. I presume those will be potential can cause issues.
But I think what you're saying, Richard, is we don't have, as Alto working group and as the authors, don't have any strong feelings.
We don't have
Whatever
we just
the
say yes.
IESG advises us as a general mechanism to handle this problem, which many working groups will have, we will do it. And we feel that this is what they wanted us to do. So let's kick it back to them and see if they agree.
Yeah, so that's all correct. I'm just wondering what did exactly in detail, and if that's so. The only thing you did basically is now referencing the new JSON format in this RFC, right? Mm-hmm. So just to be on the same safe side, maybe you want to add some discussion to this document and pointing at the problem that there are different JSON formats that might be used by different servers.
Is there some text in that document, or does it just say?
Not yet.
So I think it would be good to
Okay.
just clarify it, and then I think we're done. Yeah.
Okay, just
So maybe you can
clarify.
take a note, Sabine, that also that is something you should add to the document when you address VJ's comments. Not just require RFC 8259 or UTF-8, but just explain also the implications of that.
Mhm. Okay.
Right? Okay. And then we kick it back to the ISG and see what's happening.
As I said, I mean, if you have another question about this topic, I can feed it back to the ISG, and they are happy to help. But I will put it as a returning item on the telechat, so probably nobody will look at it again, kind of. So don't expect any further comments.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So that basically means we should maybe take it offline to the JSON expert just to be sure.
I mean, like there was a discussion with the AD that made this comment, right? So it went forth and back, and my question was mainly like, what was the end of the discussion? And I guess you also replied. Mm-hmm. And was it a discuss point? No, that wasn't a discuss point.
Yeah, but I mean, just
No, it was a comment.
Yeah,
but
right.
just to be sure, when Sabine now issues a new version after this IETF meeting with everything, maybe you could just send it to that AD. I don't know who it is again, and say, look, is this now how you want it? How the JSON experts, what there is.
If that's not already done,
It's already done.
yeah, right.
Okay.
So so I think the ISG is fine, but further explaining that it's still a good thing.
Yeah, all the updates have been submitted to the authors of the originating comment. So we are waiting for Ben Campbell's feedback on the discuss one.
All right. You're done, basically, right? So I said this already when I started this session. There are some comments also from BJ who thinks everything is good with the document, just some minor comments. Sabine, you're going to address it, and then we're going to kick it back to the ISG. And then hopefully this is another one we got done. All right. So let me look at the agenda. So yeah, actually Richard just came to me, and I think it's a good suggestion. He suggests a minor change in the agenda. He would like to talk about path vector and SSE first, And then about FCI, which I think is good because those are more mature and we want to get those really done. So if nobody has any complaints, I mean, we're not changing any items on the agenda, just the order. Richard has 3 presentations. He's going to start with path vector first. And
SSE first.
SSE first, okay. But I think nobody had, I mean, you're not taking more time, you're just changing your priority.
Oh, yeah, path vector SSE is fine.
No, SSE is fine. Let me just open it. SSE, there it is. Let me just do it on full size. Go ahead, Richard.
Okay, so let me get started, and I'll talk about SSE. And we all believe that SSE stands for service and events, and is one of the very important capabilities of Auto. And it would be not only for any particular services, we want to be as general as possible. So therefore, this one will be very, very generic capability. We think with about Auto to be generic service for all of network information updates. We discussed a lot about the possibility of whether, for example, HTTP2, given that you have a push mechanism in HTTP2, would replace SSE or not. We still actually we still feel very strongly that SSE is a very, very interesting, very clean, very easy to use interface. Therefore, we feel strongly that we should finish this one and make it as foundation. Okay. So now let me go to about details. And the current version is 17. Clearly, has gone through quite a lot of changes. And for version 17, and for people who really want, and you can take a diff from the 30, which is the last version, and to 17, we did submit a couple. Not only 2 versions, we did submit a couple intermediate versions between the 2 IETFs to give people a chance to really read the updated version. And the final version is 17. And there are 2 types of major types of changes in SSE. And the first major type, of course, would be essentially is issues identified in the working group last call. And we did got a lot of feedback and from all the people, authors themselves, and from quite a few other people and so on. And I think some updates were not really in the mailing list. There were a lot of private emails, a lot of private discussions, and so on. And so we try to fix all the issues. And second one, of course, that's a really major issue which was bugging us for a long time, actually motivated by the path vector, which I'll talk about next. And it is an issue about how to handle path vector, actually more generically, and how to handle updates about multi-part. Because right now, and all these increment updates are essentially limited to a single JSON object. And we envision that eventually a lot of resources will become multi-part to be a modular design. So therefore, we finally decided, why don't we just fix the issue in this version itself, instead of eventually later issue updates to this SSE document itself. So therefore, that's why it took a little bit of time, but we believe that we finally solved it. And then, of course, I do want to mention, even beginning, a huge group of efforts by many and several quite a few weekly meetings with quite a few people with all kind of design meetings and details and so on. So now let me go to the details and about what the changes we did. And I think maybe a little bit hard for people to read, but I did want to show kind of comparison between the old version, which is 30, and new version, which is version 17. And I did want to show all the changes that we have made. And here is outline of 13, and also that's the 17 on your right-hand side. You can see that a major change was this reorganization of the structure of the document. And it does not involve major changes of the content, but does involve major changes of the structure. For example, for people who cannot read. And in the old version, we do have a lot of, for example, design decisions and discussions. For example, we talk about if we want to use 2 or not, do you want to allow server restart or not? And now we decide that eventually, at this stage, it becomes less important to really talk about all the design options. Therefore, the decision was to move into essentially the last section, in section 14. And I don't know what the protocol eventually would be. We'll be more than happy if eventually RFC editors or said, okay, that's enough about decisions, about debate. You can remove it. Therefore, we make sure we move into the last section over there. So therefore, if you want to remove that section, we're totally fine, because in the last section, we don't refer to anything in the earlier sections. The second major restructure of the document is we do have a lot of these kind of design decisions. For example, how to do, at what time, and you do, for example, for update, what time you do incremental, and we have all kinds of, for example, what you do, how you do update all kinds of different maps. And eventually we realized that's essentially all operational and processing considerations. So therefore, if you look at it over here, and it becomes everything like section 10, which will organize all these considerations into a single place. And we feel that that's a very well structured change to organize everything into a single place. So therefore, that's one major structure change. And the second major structure change, of course, is the security. And you can look at it over there. And on the version 13, we have all the changes over there. And But later realized, oh, there's a better way to organize all the security attacks, because that's essentially we learned from all these IES reviews. So therefore, what happens was now we have section 11, and we give all kinds of different types of secure attacks, which I'll go to the details when I go to that section part. So now let me go to the major types of changes. Now let me really highlight and the major components. Now we have defined in SSE, and it will define the capabilities of SSE. And number one, of course, is this one will be interesting, is it provide incremental encoding. So that's item number one, does not change at all from all the early versions. You can see over there. And the second major change, actually, at the moment, will be allow concurrent changes to be pushed about multiple resources. And for that part, and if you look at it, so we highlight over here, the wording is called substream ID. And there's one major change is in the old version, and you call it client ID. And now we realize that's not really a client ID, it's substream. Essentially, you have one object stream, you can send a lot of substream. So therefore, now we remain to call it the substream ID. I think that's one very clean and very well structured. Instead of client assigning as a substream, so therefore upstream have multiple. So therefore we try to clarify about all the major changes. The next major change is very simple, is we call multi-part resources. I think that's an incredibly useful capability. And now we can really update multi-part, right? Essentially single JSON object, and now we can update multiple JSON objects with very, very clean, simple change, which I'll highlight. And then of course the final capability of this SSE is we allow flexible control. That was done before 13, but I do want to highlight, and we rename it. Previously, we say, oh, you call it like a control. Now we really say, hey, look, we can allow flexible control. That's essentially summarize. We have 4 very interesting capabilities in this incremental updates. And the incremental encoding, and essentially is to reduce the upper workload, and substream allow concurrency, and then multi-part allow more flexible encoding. And then flexible is control level, you have control channel. So therefore now becomes a very, very powerful and single unified control mechanism. So those are the summary of changes, and the wording was also updated over there. So now, of course, we define a little bit about all the terms, and I wouldn't want to go look at all the details. And basically, we arrange all the little bit. Now we define all the terms in the document, because we did get a lot of feedback that, okay, some more terms are defined in product. Can you rearrange the order a little bit, make it slightly easier? So therefore, we did that part of work, and we feel pretty happy about that. And now that's probably one of the other major change feedback from people. And so that's the system diagram on the left. So basically you have upstream control server, and then you have upstream server, and you have a client. And then the feedback from people will be okay, and you only have the one direction. And what if there's information essentially from here we send back to the client? Because we realize is we do provide control, so that's an update. So therefore, if you look at the charts, and you can see that now they really go back to the client, not go back actually to the stream server, actually go back over the server. So therefore, we clarify this structure of view that now the architecture is much, much better. Okay. And one more thing, of course, is we clarified all the security considerations, which I don't need to really go out of the details. And one thing, of course, is we really make sure that our changes was we clarify that all the changes will be based on all the security considerations on base protocol will still apply. So therefore, we put it over there. And then we categorize all the security issues into 3 aspects, and one stream server security, one auto client security, and one stream control server. Essentially, we have 3 types of server cell system. You have an auto client by itself, and you have auto stream server, and then of course you have also of course the stream control server. So therefore, we have 3 types of servers. Now we clarify that yes, 3 servers and security for 3 different aspects. So therefore, security section reorganized into 3 sections. Therefore, instead of organized by issues, now organized by the server's aspects. So those are the changes that we did. And now let me just go over a little bit more about the wording we did. And I'm apologies for a little bit too small fonts. And the major change again is we're trying to clarify very, very clearly about all the design choices. For example, and one question raised by the review is the following, for people who can read. For any update stream, and it will see which resource you're updating, and that's the server announcement capability, and which version you have currently, and do you support incrementation or not with a Boolean variable. And then you have object with the input for this update stream. Another review item from some readers was why incremental object by itself is a Boolean. Suppose I do have, for example, I can set a base protocol encoding, and eventually assume evolution, and you have 5 types of incremental update methods. JSON patch, merge patch, and maybe design all the other types of essential incremental encoding methods. And then why don't you allow it to indicate all these ones, and user can indicate, and user can say subset. You say, hey, I can only do, for example, the JSON merge pack. I cannot do any other incremental updates. Then shouldn't this one become more like HTTP's handshake protocol, and you say what they can offer, the other guy will tell you what they want to choose, and so on. But eventually, design decision still is Boolean, probably still better, because essentially most time is if we allow too much choice and by the clients, and then we'll make the system slightly more complex. And we feel that for auto, eventually the bottleneck will be on the server, not on the client, and the client should implement all these encoding methods as much as possible, and so on. So therefore, we use Boolean, and instead allow these more fine-grained handshake choices. So that's a major design decision, and we clarified it in this document. And the last one, and about a major change, which I want to really highlight, is the following. In the previous design, and the design was, whenever you do an update, you send a media type to talk about what kind of encoding you want to send for the updates. And then you give a client ID, which is only stream ID. But if you only give stream ID, and for all the protocols, that essentially identifies which object of this resource. But that's not enough. Why? We have multi-part, and second one, modular design, and different objects put into different objects. Now the major problem is you don't know which one. You have single stream multiple objects, how to handle it. The major design decision is now we change from client ID to call data ID. That's very clear. And so therefore, what's the meaning of data ID? Data ID essentially is very simple. Is essentially is the substream ID dot and plus the object ID. And object ID called content ID. Now you can really identify sub-objects. Now you can really update all these kind of objects. We think that's a very beautiful design. And the data ID now essentially becomes a subfield and include the substream ID data and the unique content ID. Now everything will be able to be identified. Now we can handle everything. Okay. So now let me summarize the status. I hope I'm solidified so to give a little bit more time for this later part. And the revisions, I think, I addressed all issues identified so far, and we are pretty happy as all the officers and the crowd also working really hard on this. And the plan is following. I want to take one more pass to address any working group comments from today. If any comments, please do tell us. And if you have not read or you have not read the latest version, please give us. And we want to really run on a very tight schedule, if possible. We want to get all feedback as soon as possible. We want essentially, for example, finalize the final version within 1 week of this IETF meeting, and then work through all the rest of the process.
Right. So thank you, Richard, for that presentation. I think this document is now really mature. I mean, it's version 16, and I just went through the mailing list. After the first working group last call, you got extensive comments from 2 reviewers and extensive other comments, and you have addressed all of them. So I think me personally as chair, think this really is ready now. Regarding process, what we normally do is we issue a second working group last call, and I think 2 weeks is the standard, so we're going to do that. My question to Mirja would be, so I looked at the mailing list. I don't think we need a second review, individual review this time. Do you always, with the working group last call, need a detailed review from a working group member? No, right? So I would say we had two individual reviews with the first working group last call that gave extensive comments plus other comments from the working group, and you have addressed all of them. Yes. So I would just, to do a proper process, I would issue a second working group last call for 2 weeks, but no individual, not require or not request an individual review, right?
Yes, right. So 2 things. If you want to start the working group last call immediately, like during the IETF week, then it should be 3 weeks, or you start it after the IETF week, then you go for 2 weeks.
It's whatever. The same in the end, right?
Yeah, but it's like, just like, don't start it now and only put it 2 weeks in, because then you will like, get no feedback.
Okay.
And the other comment is it's very useful you don't have to review everything, but if you read the last version, look at the changes, and then send an email to the list saying, everything is okay, I looked at it, great. Like, you don't have to provide a detailed review or anything like this, but some feedback is valuable still.
Yes,
yeah.
Right. But in any case, this has been a significant update. So we have to do another working group call to give the working group a chance to comment. So thanks. So we will issue a working group. I take a note. We'll issue a working group call on the email list after the meeting. But this seems to be ready then. I don't expect any major things. So this is another one we can then move out of the work list. Great. Are there any other comments? No. That means, Richard, you can move up to path vector,
Yes,
right?
I will.
So let me try to.
Next one depends on this one, so let me get started. That one is slightly more interesting. Well, more interesting. Let's see which one.
I'm just trying to find the slides, but maybe it's the first one. Huh? Path vector.
Yes.
Yes. So, Richard, please go ahead.
Okay, let me talk about this one, and it calls path vector. Essentially, it's our topology. We're quite different from A2IR's audio topology encoding and so on, but we don't want to really overlap the work. And for people who new, for example, and the path vector essentially is the topology encoding of a network. But we decided that for auto, we don't really want a network element type of topology encoding at all because they're too low level. We are not really talking about controlling every individual network device at all. And what auto really wants is a very high level abstraction of the topology. Therefore, that's really the abstraction we're talking about. And path vector is a pretty good abstraction, and therefore that's why we think that's one of our major piece of work. And again, we also did a lot of updates. So hopefully, we also feel that this version is mostly ready, but there's small dependency which I raised at the end. But we do want to hear people feedback because we feel that this one also getting ready now. So now let me just give you a really high-level overview about what we have changed in this new version, 06. And a major technical design change is we have finalized update on the information structure. That was debating point actually back and forth for like 2 or 3 times, and we just go back and forth and go back and forth. We debate all the time, but eventually this moment, and all the authors, and actually not only all the authors, a lot of people remember I talk about the weekly meetings with probably 10, 15, 20 people every single week. And most people feel that we got it right. So we want to really get a working group also feedback, say, do we get it right or not this time? And then, of course, for this version, we also got quite a lot of like small text updates and clarified overview of approaches because we really changed it. And finalized update on path vector cost mode because that's the name eventually, and we finalize it. And update in the entity domain and property type registry by following the latest standard and so on. So therefore, that's an overall structure. But the main part is I want to talk about the first part, which is the structure of the system, because that would be the most important part, and we really want to get the working group comments. Okay, so here is for people who need to refresh the memory a little bit, and here is what this abstraction really does in this auto path vector. So fundamental, what path vector does is the following: is I have a lot, for example, this is really designed for the context of data analytics. That's as a motivating use case. And you have a lot of data, for example, Spark and MapReduce, and all the other ones. Oftentimes, is you have a large number of potential, for example, mappers or reducer. You want to send the information around. Sender 1, receiver 1, sender 2, receiver 2, and so on. You have all the possibilities. And what you want is get abstraction about the resource capability from all these simultaneous flows, what we call co-flows. And that's the academic term. And you want to say, okay, what kind of constraint you have for this? If I use all these flows together, what constraint I have? For that one, it turns out really convey this kind of abstraction. What we need essentially is have 2 types of data. Type 1 of data is what we call a cost map, essentially a path vector. Basically, we would say, okay, and you want to talk to, for example, this network location. To the network location, you're going to go over those abstract network elements. What's a network abstract element? It could be a single network switch. It could be a sequence of switches. It could be whatever. Essentially, this is very flexible abstraction. So therefore, that's called cost map. And you might have multiple these flows, and they all be calculated in an abstract way in at the same time. But if you only have a path vector by the BDP, you don't have enough information. And what you need to do is you also should provide information for every single abstract network element. For example, say, hey, I'm using this one and this one. You need to really tell the user what's the property. For example, oh, for this abstract element, I have 100 units of available bandwidth. For this one, I have 200. Because why? If you give all the path vectors and you build a matrix, and you can compute the shared bottleneck. If you don't give property, you cannot. So fundamentally, this abstraction, which we believe is very generic, very elegant, will need 2 types of information, and cost map and property map used simultaneously. Then we face a major design problem in this protocol. And major design problem is how to really convey 2 pieces of information in the same message. One design option, which was discussed in the earlier part, was a very simple one, was we put the property map into the path vector. That's very clean design. But unfortunately, this one would break existing auto cost map media type. Because why? In the existing media type, You only have a path vector, but you don't have a property of those identical elements. You could add this element, and if you're not don't worry about modular design, and for example, you really talk about like young model, you don't care about like a modular transformation, and you want to modular to be in a type system, that's totally legitimate. But we feel that that's too much. That would break our design. Now what happens is now auto cost map become version 2, and end point cost map become version 2, and all these type of things. That's not a generic solution. And we realized like coupling of resources, we found an issue that really solved it nicely. Design option 2 is let's really take the modular design and send the two maps into separate messages and path vector message in one and property map in another separate message. You know, they're all encoding everything beautiful, decoupled, reusability, model design, and all software engineering. And nice things you can see about that. Now the middle prime now will be snapshot consistency. So what's snapshot consistency? And you do is following. You do the query. You want to do this abstraction. I'm doing starting my map job, Spark job, and they tell me all the shared path vectors and all shared elements, and then I get the first map. And then what I do is I query their properties for all network abstract elements, get their properties, and I get a response. But unfortunately, this query happened at time 1, and this query happened at time 2. So 2 times, and oftentimes you can in intermediate time this value might change. So therefore, you got a consistent problem, and consistent problem probably is one of the most important problems in large-scale system designs, and that's oftentimes major issues of Facebook and Google, Amazon, you name it, they face. We think we should solve this problem elegantly, so we don't want to design because it's very, very complex, consistent issues. Probably most end users of auto don't even want to think about this kind of strong consistency, weak consistencies, and sequential core consistency. There's so many consistencies, it's just too much. So what we decided is eventually using this design. That's the 03 version of path vector. So design is fun. We're going to enforce strong consistency in the sense that all the messages be encoded into a single response. Because single message, there's no way to really get inconsistency. So therefore, on the left-hand side, for people who really want to refresh their memory, that's the request. You want really, for example, get path vector, and you specify, okay, and I'm really interested in, etc. I want to start 2 data transfers from 1.20.2 and to .2.89 and also to 130.45. Actually, I have 3, and also this IPv6. I want to start 3 simultaneous transformations. And the system will do is give you the cost map, tell you all the path vectors involved in this transfer, and also part of all this one. But we want module design, which really means is we're going to have the multi-part encoding. For the multi-part encoding is first type would be, for example, would be a path vector, second property, but they will use the essential mine type or multi-part and you boundary. It's very nice design. It was adopted by the working group in 03. But unfortunately, this one doesn't work. That's why the team stalled for a while. So what are the issues? So now let me really go over. Issue number 1 about this design is, in auto basic protocol design, immediate type of each IRD entry indicates response type. What kind of message you get back from the server for this service, for this URL? And which also indicates the type of service. This is a cost map, this is a network map, and this is a path vector, and this is an endpoint or cost map. You have all kinds of services also indicated from it. So for example, here is a grammar of what it is. And for essentially information directory to really announce what kind of service offered by an auto server. And here we want potential example. Basically, will be okay. I have this routing cost map. I need to have, of course, also a cost map. And I can have also endpoint cost map. So therefore, I give need type. So therefore, I know what kind of response I anticipate, and also what service this entry really provides. But now let's do a very simple thought experiment. If you say, okay, let's be consistent. And this one should announce what the media type, mine type you get back from the server. Now this one will become essentially multi-part related. This entry will also become multi-part related. And now you look at the entry and say, okay, which one? Is it really for the cost map or for endpoint cost map? I don't know. You could try to infer about it, but that's not elegant, and we're stuck. So, oh, we're really missing. But for consistency, of course, we can change the cost map, but now really is now this one will indicate what kind of message we get from original minor message, and we're stuck on this issue. The second issue we also stuck, and also we were trying to really handle, I think, very carefully was I talk about SSE issue. Suppose here is you get 2 pieces of objects back from the server. And one, for example, is the path vector. The second one, properties of all network elements. Now, how do you use SSE? The pre-design of SSE was very simple. Is you have the media type, what it is, and you have the object indicator, essentially the substream indicator. But here is I have two JSON objects with the same message, and I don't know which one. And all the incremental encoding method we know of, JSON patch and merge patch, they can all be applied to only a single JSON object. That's only one. And we could design another type, but that would be a lot of work. So the basic reason is we don't know. If you simply update and you say, hey, I want to update this object, update which one, they're equal. There is really parallel. There's no root. We cannot know which one can be updated. So therefore, that's the second issue which we encountered, and we will struggle with. That's why we're stuck a little bit for a few weeks, and maybe like even a couple months. Now let me talk about the final update, how we solve the issue. It turns out the solution is very simple, surprisingly simple. And what we did actually, of course, we should really do our homework as good as possible. And we went back to really read all these RFCs as carefully as possible. And of course, multi-part related defining RFC 2387. And of course, oftentimes for people who are not familiar with multi-part related, if you, for example, you get your email with attachment, and that's using multi-part related, that's essentially the multiple objects. Realize here's a grammar of multi-part, which means you can have really the grammars and multi-part related. And you should specify potential field. Start info, and CID list, and type equal to type and subtype. And if you read carefully about even the wording of RFC 2387, is the type of parameter must be specified in this type system. And its value is my media type is the media type of the root body part. Isn't that beautiful? So now suddenly what it really means is solution is very, very simple. The solution is add the required type parameter in the media type in IRD, in all the messages essentially. Now, for example, whenever you specify a service, you will say, okay, media type equal to multi-part related, that's the correct media type. But you must give a parameter with the type equal application auto cost map. And you must give a media type equal multi-part, for example, application and endpoint cost map and so on. Essentially now, that's a root object type, and the overall type is multi-part related. We solve all the problems beautifully. So now let me see how we solve the second issue. The second issue, of course, related with multi-part path vector, and essentially how do we incremental updates using SSE. It turns out very simple as well as for multi-part related, and each sub-object, of course, that's a root, and those will be sub-objects in this essential tree of objects. You must have something called content ID. Okay. So therefore, the solution for us also turns out to be very simple now. So what you do is a multi-part related PV message, password message, you call the content ID, identify the two objects. We have two objects. And SSE would use a more generic data ID, identify which stream you're doing a subscription, and also which content ID, so you can really update which particular object, either property map or the path vector or the property. So therefore, we can update both in a single message. Now everything will tie up together. So, and now, of course, we also did a very small minor change, which is we really need to really finalize about the data type and for the system. And previously, an auto type system always considered of two members. One is called the cost mode, one called the cost metric. Cost mode is essentially the type system in like program languages, and it's numerical ordinal and so on. And the cost metric is semantic of the meaning. And eventually we said, okay, let's really finalize and really revise all the name, and we call it cost mode path vector. And the cost metric is a metric using which all these actual network elements are computed. Okay, enough content. Let's really probably best we illustrate. And for people who don't want to read it like all this like a text, and let me show go through the whole process using a few messages. Therefore, everyone can understand what's going on. I think we finally feel that we get everything correct. Here is an IRD. Okay, so for this IRD, basically let's look at all of the parts. For example, I want to have path vector to really calculate the path vector from, for example, some end host IP addresses to all the other ones. I want to use path vector to get all these abstractions. So what I specify is media type equal to multi-part related, type equal to endpoint cost. Now you really answer, oh, that's how I use it. I really need to specify all these essential endpoints, all the IP addresses. And cost mode is this one, and this one is cost mode in the path vector. If you want to do another query, and you want to query, for example, instead of, for example, endpoint cost, you want to use essential, like, for example, cluster or network using PID and using root node. you can say, okay, cost map equal to auto cost map. Now, by looking at this IRD, you can really identify which service you're talking about. Because why? This one will give you the root object type, which exactly is the type of service you're getting. You just have an auxiliary, essentially dependent object being attached. But by providing the type of root object, you know what service it is. It's very elegant. And now with IRD, and now the client can issue a query. Okay? So here is you can query by endpoint, or you can query, for example, by group or a class of network nodes. So let's say the example where you query by individual network endpoints. So here's your query, and you specify you accept multi-part related, and your object must equal this. And then you give path vectors. And now what you do is you specify all the endpoints you want to read a query. So here you have two queries you want to send simultaneously, and you get this stuff. And then what happens is here's the response. Response essentially is very simple. Let me just go over for people who want to learn a little bit even about this. And multi-part related boundary, because it's mine, and type equals the root object, and our starting point will be first object ID. And here's first object ID, and then you have second one with property type. And now here everything can also work out very well. It is for this property type depends on path vector. We can also depend. Everything just works. So now let me go to suppose let's want to do incremental updates. How do I do in time? So now let's see how you do incremental updates. It's also now turns out to be very simple. Here's your query about all these abstractions. You also would provide, for example, an incremental updates service for this. And this one would provide incremental updates. So what happens is very simple. It's for this incremental updates, and you specify that I'm going to use this abstraction. Okay. So therefore, and what basically you do is following is you do a post, and you will add a subscription service. Oh, I see. So you do essentially is you specify a new subscription service. For example, here is ECS path vector subscription 1. That's very clean. And then you get the data. And then what the response looks like is the event, which indicates what type of you get. And then what you also specify is that's really for this particular service. And then you get a content ID, and you get a second content ID, and you get the initial content, because you really, for oftentimes, for incremental updates, for this kind of push notification, you always get the whole object first. And then what you do is now you can get incremental updates. So how do you do? It turns out to be simple. And here's the first message. You get the whole message. And then what you do is, here, you give out the whole message, and that's the subscription service to content. And now you can incremental update the two pieces, two parts individually. You can say, okay, I'm updating ECS path vector subscription 1 PV map object, which is this object with content ID. And now you can update these two objects individually. So everything now just works together, and it works really nicely. And now let me summarize discussion. The authors feel that finally they got it right. It took us really some time, and but of course we still appreciate any additional feedback. And we're going to wait for SSC, and because we really depend on SSC and unified property, we depend very little on unified property. It's essentially what have been encoding. And then we can proceed with finalization. So those would be updated on the path vector document. Okay, I'll wrap up.
Right. So thank you, Richard, for the explanation of all the work you've done. I know that there have been lots of rather complicated issues that you addressed. So my first question would be, are there any technical questions? And then I want to discuss the process issue, of course.
Sure, of course.
There seems to be no technical question. So regarding process, yeah, Richard, I mean, it's what is your view? I think this is ready for working with last call.
It is.
Okay. So as chair, I don't have any objection. I would clarify with Vijay, of course, but okay. I think if you think you have solved all the dependencies and you have updated, you've informed the working group now, everybody can look at the slides or listen to the recording.
Sure.
I think I will discuss with Vijay, but most likely we're going to issue a working group last call.
Okay.
On path vector, and you are going to talk about unified properties.
Yes. I think next one we'll talk about unified property.
Right. So we can.
We'll talk about it.
Right. So, but yeah, so on path vector, I think I'm going to take a note there and discuss with BJ, but we're most likely going to issue a working class call. And we are more than happy that we are moving this ahead.
Yes, finally. And of course, the only caveat would be if, for example, there's any last minute change about SSC unified property, we need to update those. I presume those will be examples. We just use as it is. So
right. So maybe I should have said this also in the beginning. A while ago, we agreed that path vector and unified properties are going to be moved ahead together.
Great.
So obviously, that's the caveat we have. So if there is any issue with unified properties, I'm not so much sure about SSC because that one is mostly done. But yeah, right.
Great. Any other comments?
No.
Great.
Okay, so you are going to present now on FCI?
First go to unified property.
Unified property, sorry, yes. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, so who's going to present? Sabine is going to present. All right, sorry, I didn't. Right.
So actually, we are going to share the presentation with Richard. Well, on that one, we had as well substantial discussions, but because it's very important. I mean, it's really central to path vector and to all the current charter, actually. Basically, so since the last version, we were trying to figure out how to couple or how to build a consistency on a property and also the resources, the information resources that are used to convey this property or to convey the entity domain of the objects on which these properties are conveyed. So this presentation is halfway between the current version and the one that will be submitted after this meeting. So the current version is 07. So basically the updates, well, there have been major changes in section 2. Why section 2? Because that's where all the definitions are. So we visited definitions of unified property, what a property type, property name, dependency type, and actually we are not done. So I will not focus on what we did because we intend to change it, but I will try to focus on explaining the problem. So, well, one change that we will keep is to move from the notion of entity address to entity identifier. Because, well, address makes sense in IPv4 and IPv6, but in PAD, for example, that it's a name in country code and what have you. It's better to have identifier. This is more generic. So we proposed in the current version an option 1 to solve the following problem. Let me start with an example. Okay, this example is inspired from the CDNI draft. And in that CDNI draft, there is an example of an IRD. And actually looking at the IRD, we figure that, and looking at the example transactions, requests and responses, well, we figure that we have a server who would like to convey properties, CDNI FCA capabilities and property PID, and it would like to convey it for entity in the domains IPv4, IPv6, country code, and ASN. So that's the example. So basically, the server says, "Oh, okay, yeah, it's kind of convenient. I often have requests in that sense. So let me put a map, a property map, where I convey like CDNI FCI capabilities and PIDs on those domains, and maybe given some requests. Server would like to convey all these properties, but the problem with when you have to document what map is used to verify those properties, it's hard to figure out which one relates to which one. So this is actually a bad example here, because it does not allow to provide the resources dependency without introducing ambiguities. So, okay, there is one way to figure out how to do this is, okay, I can say, well, okay, let me have a property map that conveys FCI capabilities and PIDs on entities in this domain, because it's a frequent request, say. So that relies on my default network map and my default CDNI FCI map. And I can have another property map that defines CDNI FCI capabilities on entities in this domain. So this way, I do not introduce I introduce less ambiguity, and I avoid associating entity domains, resources in entity domains on which I cannot define the property. So I do not introduce errors. But if you look at that, you can say, well, there's redundancy, and it's still not clean. There is no clean, unambiguous way to associate resource dependency with property map resources. So now let me go back to a couple of slides. So, and we have these characteristics on properties, that some properties can only apply to given entity domain. So that's fine. So for example, you can define the PID property on IPv4 domain, but you cannot define it on PIDs. And another point is that the understanding of the value of a property depends on which domain you apply it to. For example, suppose I define a property called geolocation. So that is encoded as a couple of latitude, longitude. So if I apply it to a entity that has an IPv4 address, which is just a host, fine, okay, that defines the coordinates where this host is located. But I may want to define it to associate to a PID. So a PID, okay, then I could define it as the coordinates of the center of gravity of all these hosts or of this domain, of this subnetwork. And so in that case, it would have a different meaning. And in the end, first of all, it would have a different meaning. As second, then it would depend on a given information resource. So this is just to illustrate the real necessity of having a mechanisms that really, in a clean way, associate resources dependency, unambiguous resources dependency on property map resources.
Sabine, we are slightly behind schedule,
okay.
And I saw you have still a lot of slides. We have like 7-8 more minutes.
So I'll give the floor to
Richard.
Yes.
Exactly. All right. But
Okay.
please hurry up. I mean, I looked
Sure.
at the slides. I know you have prepared lots of detailed material, and I think it's still useful because people can look at it. But yeah,
I'll be very quick, and so I'll try to finish in time 7 minutes, right? So,
7-8 minutes would be great. Yeah.
okay. So here is one way about essential design option 1. That's what we write up in the current draft. And for people here is, and there are all these rules and so on. Basically, I think Sabine gives already the overview and so on. And the major issue design option 1 is bind the resource dependencies to the whole property map. So therefore, we feel that eventually, and to handle all kinds of very flexible design, and we are more and more encountered, it's no longer as clean as possible. And so therefore, what I'm going to talk about is design option 2. And by the way, I don't know how many people here are experts in relational database.
Define expert.
Expert means, I just take a class in, for example, define as if it's a taken class in database, relatively rigorous database class.
I would assume people in the room know what a relational database is.
Relational database, great. So we do have the right audience, and now we encounter a huge amount of issues to really clean, and so eventually, actually, what I propose, by the way, even though it sounds like a major change, it is not. Mostly, we a certain section 2.5, 2.6. They are not major change, but somehow, unfortunately, we would give you a total different view about look at how we solve this problem. So therefore, let me get started on option 2. Even the design resource, the query become unified, it become a little bit too complex. So therefore, we have option 2. So therefore, let me just get started. Option 2 motivation is very simple. It takes a very, very dramatic and a very simplified view, which is you look at every single endpoint property, whatever in RPC 72285, which is auto-based protocol. You can consider this one as just a set of database tables. I don't know if you get this. That's very clean. And so basically what's a network map? It's just database table. And database table, of course, here is our JSON object. And you have a bunch of this aggregation of network nodes and what they are, and name of a node, what they are. And one way to represent it is very simple, is you write it down as a network, as a SQL table, relational table. Name of the aggregation and the IP prefix, and name prefix, and name prefix into it. That's the view you look at it. You have a second network map, because a different ISP or different part, you do a different aggregation, and you can consider as a table, data table, and the entry and the value. Okay? And now if you really look at it, you are doing endpoint query, essentially you're doing a SQL select. So what happens is it said, okay, let me give you an IPv4 prefix and tell me for this one, what their aggregation IDs are. That's essentially can be accomplished by a very simple SQL query. So far, people with me so far? That's a dramatic point of view. And of course, trivial database using relational algebra, because here you have all the overlapping of IP addresses and so on. Relational algebra wouldn't work, can be handled by something called flow algebra, but you don't have to go to those details. Those are just defined by essentially the details. High level is tables. That's what we do. And now if you talk about this one, now essentially I want to propose a total different view. The change could be very minimal to drop is following. Each resource in auto define a table in a database. The whole database auto server is a database server and maintains all kinds of tables. Of course, with different semantics, because we do have complexities, for example, prefix matching and so on. A column of table defines an attribute. The projection of a column defines its domain. Those are all standard SQL and relational database definitions. And for example, and here's table 1, network 1, and you have 2 attributes. And attribute 1 can do projection, you get domain. And you do projection here, you get domain. And you can do every domain and projection on every single column, you get a domain. Here, 2 domains, 1, 2, and here 3 domains, and so on. Each table defines one or multiple mappings. For example, table 1 defines mapping from IPv4 to PIP, original ID. You can even do the reverse mapping, because essential relational database, essentially the set base is, because, I can even define mapping from given your original ID, what's a set of IP addresses. You can do the reverse. This one really does not specify mapping from function from here to here, or from here to here, does not matter. A property map defines a view from an attribute to a property. That's all it does. Therefore, unified property is a SQL query. So for example, for the previous example, for this one, very quickly, and for this SQL query, if you really want to write down, of course, this one has issues using the SQL language, because number 1, very inefficient, number 2, have all the issues of overlapping addresses. But conceptually, essentially, it's a customized version of SQL query. Select IPv4, network map 1.pip, network 2 pip, from network map 1, network map 2, where network 1 IPv4, you could input network in your input, you select all the values, you're done with it. Isn't it just beautiful, the SQL? If you can handle all the overlapping correctly, not use a specialized relational algebra. So if we talk about this one now, the central design space for this one is very simple. Value change only a couple of sections, not like me to rewrite of the whole design. Each entity space what we do is define number 1, we define entities. To define entities, we include a concept called entity domain type namespace. IPv4, IPv6, PID, ASN, AN, and so on. The column is an analogy of a database is a type and name of table. In every database, and you create a table for all the 5 columns. Each column you give a type and name, and here you combine a type and name. You see what it is? It's int, is string, and here it's IPv4, IPv6. We need specialized domain specific meaning. What's the entity domain? It's very simple. It's that entities from the attributes of specific resource. You do a projection. For example, what's the entity domain? You project it in that domain. You project that domain, project it in that domain. And identification of domain becomes very simple is resource ID domain type. Simple column. Which table, which column.
Okay, Richard.
What that? Okay. And the entity, of course, the domain ID and domain specific. I'll be very quick. And the property become type equivalent to PID, and you give it a property name, and go or property identify a property for entity in the domain, and therefore essentially every property becomes resource ID dot property equal to that. So now I'll wrap up. So basically now what really happens very simple is resource type become property type. It's very simple. It's every resource type, it's like a network map or uniform type, every also resource you define a set of entities where an entity is in domain type and properties for that particular domain type. You just essentially, instead of looking at the relational algebra, look at every what entity, what connection you can map to, what entry you can map to, you define as a standard. And for network map, you do this. And then what's a property map? It turns out property map is also an auto resource. A automatic resource itself includes an entity domain type and properties and so on, and properties you can match and so on. This one actually can be a recursive process by itself. So therefore, of course, the only difference if you property map and you all the resources should have resource ID. Here it's very simple: is you can use this yourself. This is okay. This myself, like this property myself. Otherwise, I can import from some other resources to define the total view. So therefore, and basically now turns out to be very simple design. And for each entity domain type, what type system we have in Auto, and for each property type, essentially what kind of list we have, we define them. And registry for the mapping for whenever you define your auto type service, for example, a network map, cost map, and endpoint map, you define what kind of domains types you have and what kind of mapping you provide. We can pull from you. You define this abstraction and then we're all done. So all the dependency, all the complexity, all the users are all gone. We just define a very clean based on this relational algebra, and everything just go away, and all these comments go away. We have a very simple, clean design. So that's that's the option 2. And I think for people with database background, this probably should look very, very intuitive. So discussion will be which one we want to use, and of course what we will do is we'll post to the mailing list. We'll run only 2 meetings, weekly meeting to talk about the design. People are more than welcome to join, discuss. We want to finish a new version of draft for this call because I think this change actually is a minor change. We mostly involve notations of properties and restrictions. They are not major text changes. And go sub-draft with the final design by end of April if possible with all these other dependencies.
All right. Thank you, Sabine and Richard. So I think for most of the working group members, if they really want to follow this, they need to read the draft and follow. I mean, you gave a high-level explanation, but it was probably quick for people. So people who are interested in this, please read the document and give feedback. That's my comment number 1. Sure. Regarding process, as far as I understood, both design options are not anymore the dependency you have with path vector, right?
Correct.
So
depend on this.
It does? On the outcome of the options?
Only the examples.
Okay, so let me rephrase this. My question is, can we issue a working group last call on path vector while this is still undecided, or do we need to wait then also with path vector? That's what I need to know as chair. I mean, we can, if you say path vector is more or less done, but we should wait until this is done, that's not a problem, I guess.
One way we can do is I believe we probably can remove a dependency of unified property away from path vector to this document itself.
That would be an option.
Right.
Again, I don't have any strong feelings if we want to do it right. I mean, we spend so much effort, we want to do it right. So we can wait. So I guess you should discuss with the authors of both documents what you propose.
Okay.
And for now, I'm taking a note not to issue working blast call on path vector for now. Okay. And we will have a discussion on the mailing list and see how it goes. Sure. My understanding is, though, path vector is more or less done.
Almost, yes.
And you're just waiting to resolve this issue?
For the result from
right.
Into path vector.
Okay. So then the more I think about it, I think we wait a little bit longer with path vector just to make everything, properly. So we hope that you can resolve this. I encourage you to ask people on the mailing list or people who are interested in this comment.
Sure.
Again, I think you gave a good overview, but it was probably, if nobody has read, if you haven't read the document, it was probably too quick to follow everything. Yeah, so that's my recommendation. Obviously, as chairs, we want to get it done. So please do as you promised, discuss the options, and move the draft ahead.
Okay. Sure, definitely.
So as far as I understand, once you've decided for one of the two options, the draft is ready for working class.
Yes, yes, right.
So yes,
2.6, 2.7.
let's aim at end of April. I think that's good. Yeah, let's aim by and then also with the path vector, we can wait another couple of weeks.
Correct. Yes.
We decide path vector is ready. We put it on hold. You decide on one or two options on the mailing list, and among the authors, of course.
Mm-hmm.
You make a decision, and then we can issue a working class call combined for both documents once you've updated this one.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay. Any comments? Questions? No. So then we are 5 minutes behind schedule. Richard, you are up with FCI.
Yes, I do.
Which is
I'll be very quick. Yeah.
Well, so I mean, the agenda has been set up that the working group items have priority. So yeah, but if you can hurry up, we would have time for the 3 individual presentations, and I think they would be thankful if they have their 7-8 minutes each. So yeah, I'm putting up FCI.
I'll be quick.
And let's see where.
So FCI actually motivates a lot of design for this unified product. We want to really unify everything. Sometimes maybe we're a little bit ambitious.
Here's FCI. All right.
Okay, I'll be brief and quick. So basically, actually, FCI is document relatively stable, and unless it depends on the encoding of that query. So basically, it's quite stable. Of course, now the major problem, of course, it depends on SSE. And in section 3.73, 4.2.4, 5.73, 6.24, it depends on SSE examples. We really use examples, only examples over there. And all examples and unified property in section 6 and 8, we depend on using pulling the results from unified property into this one as examples. So those are the dependencies of FCI, but they are just small nuggets or very small examples. And the changes addressing we got a lot of reviews, and the change addressing the review essentially can see from the state from 03 to 06. And there are some issues raised by reviews, but not fully addressed yet. So I'll be focused very quickly. I'm just skip all these reviews. You can look at yourself about all the major changes, about all the text, a lot of text revisions and so on. And I probably can go over all the definitions, revisions, and security controls, a lot of security controls and so on. I probably can just skip, and they're not really essential. The 2 major issues, and like they're not like major personally, but some reviewers feel very strongly they are major. So therefore, let me discuss what they are and get feedback from the group. And issue number 1 from one of the reviews is the following. And from RC 7285, but right now we call FCI footprint, CDNI footprint, footprint and capability interface. We call everyone called a map. And the one reviewer basically doesn't feel like at all. And here is the argument. This is a sentence from RFC, the base protocol. This document also defines dictionary maps, or maps for short. Basically means in the base protocol, maps defined as dictionary maps, which is maps from strings to JSON values. And for example, definition below defines type 3 object as my type 1 must be defined as string, and type 2 must be defined as any type. Basically, okay, type 3, map from type 1 to type 2. And CDNI, now the argument would be, we're using the definition from CDNI working group, and turns CDNI working group decided not to use this kind of key value store, and they essentially use, for example, a different format. Basically, okay, capability type, and the capability type value, and footprint, and footprint value, essentially not using key value store. And therefore, the objection from that review is we should not use a name called map. And revision is very simple. It will rename like a map, say table, whatever. We found a name, table or entry or data. And so therefore, and personally, I'm very neutral, but if we want a strong feeling from working group, we can change this name. We don't call it CDNI FCI map, we call CDNI FCI data or CDNI whatever table, we can do that. Because we're really using a normal, we're done is key value store, which is typically like Redis in a lot of public databases. Then of course there's also other databases don't use key value store. It's a bunch of attributes. So I'm very neutral on this. So therefore that's question number 1. Now let me talk question number 2. The current design allows query only by footprint or only by capability. And a reviewer is to talk about, can you do the query for both footprint and capability? And the potential next step is, number one, don't address this one at all. We have 2 queries already. And number 2, revise the document to really address them. And possibility number 3, extend the unified property to really allow joint queries on like when I talk about type 3. Personally, I probably feel comfortable with option number 1, but I do want to post the issue to the working group because that's the minimal, therefore we can finish the document as soon as possible. But I do want to lay out all the issues. I think those are essentially the 2 major issues. All the rest is just tactical already done. And therefore, I'm waiting for these 2 issues. So therefore, let's see if any suggestions or feedback from people on these 2 issues. Issue 1, issue 2.
Thank you very much for being quick, Richard. Yes. For people interested in this document, please send your comments on the mailing list so the authors know the opinion of the working group. After all, this is a working group item.
Yes.
If there are no or few comments, Richard, I think the authors, including me, should proceed as we
decide ourselves.
regard best. Ourselves. I'm happy that this gets finally done, and we can move it then hopefully also to working with last call.
Okay, sure.
Thank you. So that closes all our working group items. I'm happy that we're making progress. We decided already that 2 working, so basically cost calendar we send to IESG once Sabine gives an update, and SSE we're going to do a working group last call, and hopefully after the 1 issue on unified properties has been resolved, we can also move path vector and unified properties to working last call, and CDNI FCI is the one that maybe takes one step longer, but also that we can hopefully move along. Great. So that means we now have, if I'm correct, 25 more minutes. 6:10 the session ends, right? Anybody? Yeah. So 25 more minutes. We have 3 more presentations. That means 8 minutes each. And the first one is Danny, I think, right? Okay, please. So these are individual documents that we are happy that people are working on them, and we try to give them time to present. But as I said before, we're not taking any humps on working group adoption at this point in time because we want to spend our energy on finishing the working group items or our milestones. So this is you, right?
Yeah.
So let me get it straight. Okay. Yeah.
Hey, this is Danny from the University of Campinas. Basically, the rationale of this document is to offer an overview of standardization activities and research projects, including the problem statement behind the provision on end-to-end network services across different domains. In addition, from a layered network model, it's also proposed a potential ALTO extension related to end-to-end network service requirement representation. And another important object is to start a discussions into the ALTO working group and the industrial players related to potential new items or use cases that could motivate the new ALTO charter once the current working group items has been completed. Basically, end-to-end network services often require virtual network function and their specific order. Network operators are considering to offer their vertical customer the possibility of configuring network services with the specific requirements in terms of resources or performance objectives. Such demands are usually composed by distributed resources, which are to be expected available across different domains with different technologies and administrations. In this context, different standardization activities and research projects has been focused on multi-domain end-to-end network services. For example, in case of the ALTO working group, we have some documents. For example, the ALTO Basic Broker Assistant Architecture provides a broker plane working as a coordinator between a set of top-level control planes for multi-domain orchestration. The Unicore document provides a resource orchestration framework for multi-domain geo-distributed data analytics. And another document that Xia will present later introduces several multi-domain applications and how they can be benefit from the ALTO protocol. We have another initiative between the Service Function Chaining Working Group and between the EXI, for example, we have this report that provide different NFV manual architectural approach with use cases related to network services across different administrative domains. In case of the research project, they include architectural models integrating NFV and SDN to address the challenges toward flexible multi-domain service chaining. we have different approach. For example, Vital and Tinova provide a centralized approach, or in case of the 5GX or 5G transformer provide a distributed approach. Related to the problem statement, as I'm mentioning before, an end-to-end service request specify virtual node, a set of virtual network function, virtual links that determine the order in which the virtual network function need to be executed. Both virtual nodes and virtual links are limited resources and can be located in different domains. So the placement decision problem involves the discovery of best candidates domains or resource and best feasible paths between such resource. In order to take optimizing decision for the placement, the management application or network application need to maintain a network inventory in order to get a real-time representation of the available infrastructure resources. The size of this network inventory can be very large in a scenario such as distributed cloud or edge computing. So aggregation mechanisms are necessary in order to reduce the time to discover such resources or for the management of them. Once the network inventory is built, a publishing information mechanism is also necessary in order to the network inventory can provide a simplified yet enough information view to the network application. Just to see quickly the XE reference architecture, by far the most accepted NFV reference architecture. Here we have the on the left the data plane, and we have the NFV infrastructure. We have BNF and element management system, and on the right we have the control plane. We have the virtual infrastructure manager. We have the NFV manager, BNF manager, and NFV orchestrator on the top. From this NFV reference architecture, we have a layered network model. This model allows a separation between the network relationship in different levels of abstraction. For example, here we have an end-to-end network service composed by a set of virtual network functions represented by the network service layer. Each virtual network function is composed by a set of virtual function components represented by the BNF layer, and the resource layer represents the virtual and physical resources where the virtual function component will be instantiated. So depending of the NFV architecture that we use in multi-domain scenarios, we can have, for example, an NFV infrastructure as a service, as an Alto information sources, and we can have an NFV orchestrator or a BNF manager as an Alto client, looking for domains where instantiate the BNF or the virtual function components. From this layered network model, we propose an Alto extension related to end-to-end network service requirement representation. An initial proposal is presented in this draft, the Alto-based broker assistant multi-domain orchestrator, where a network application working as an Alto client needs to specify the set of end-to-end network service requirements to the Alto server to obtain candidate resource or domains and candidate paths. The idea is to use the XNFV manual data model that defines the network service as a composition of network function, including the functional and behavioral specification. Such specifications are captured in templates called network service descriptor or BNF descriptor. Yeah, we can skip, I think, this slide. Yeah, basically the network service descriptor contains static information used to the process of onboarding network services, and the virtual network function descriptor provides information used to the process of onboarding virtual network function. Finally, as next steps, the idea is to get a feedback from the Alto working group. As I'm mentioning when I started my presentation, the idea is to interact with the industrial player in order to identify new cases or that could be justify the recharter or possible new extension to the Alto-based protocol. In the particular case of the University of Campinas, we have a couple of interested industrial players. We have Telefonica and Ericsson, and we are trying to identify specific action points related to this extension. That's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Danny. You're absolutely exactly on time. I would refer questions to the mailing list so that we can have 2 more presentations. I think that's in everybody's interest. Certainly, if we are chartering the working group, this is important work that needs to be considered then. I totally agree. But as I said before, if we're going to recharter, we also need to find new chairs for this working group, but that's a different discussion.
Okay.
So let's keep this in mind, and thank you for your presentation. And if there are any questions, please raise your hand on the mailing list. And now we're going to have 2 more presentations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I'm just looking at the agenda. Who's next? So Jensen is next on multipart alto. I hope that he's going to present remotely. I hope that that's going to work. Say again? In Meet Echo? Yeah, I mean, the Meet Echo team sent him emails, and I think, but I don't see him online. So, oh yeah, there he is.
Hello. Hello.
There he is. Right.
So Aaron, hear me?
Yeah, everything works. Great. We can see you.
Okay. That's
so, yeah, I guess I can move the slides forward and you can talk. Let me just open your slides. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
And this is multipart, right? So I have your slides here, and you can just go ahead. So this is now slide number 1.
Yeah. Just from the page number 2. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So everyone, is Jensen, and we'll give some update on the auto multipart extension today. So this is already the 3rd revision of the auto multipart document, and the goal of this revision is we want to clarify some motivations and solve some compatibility issues. That's the main goal. And since the last revision from the last auto interim meeting, we did following changes. They rewrite some term definitions to make them consistent with some related RFCs, and write some specification and examples to follow the changes of the related working group documents like the SSE and the unified properties, and also make some major changes to extend our design space and solve some compatibility issues. Yeah, next page, please. Okay, so that's the design space, the new design space for the current document for the current auto multipart extension, and we indicate 3 cases. We can use multipart messages in the auto protocol. So the first case we call the multipart request and the multipart response. And in the or a single example in this case, it's batch query. The client can send a multipart mixed request, including a sequence of the auto requests, and the server returns them in multipart mixed response in order. And the second case, we call it the single request and the fixed layout multipart response. And the hash vector query we already mentioned in our previous session. This is a special case of this. And in this case, the media type of the request specifies a single JSON object input, but the response is a multipart message. So, however, the layout of the response must be fixed. So we need to explicitly export what's the layout of the response, so that the client can predict what the response looks like. And for the third case, it's similar to the second case, but it's more general. And we consider the response layout can be flexible and it can be changed by the different requests. And this case, we already discussed and proposed in our previous revision. So we do not waste time to talk about it. So next page. Yeah, thank you. So this is the example for the first case, and in this case, in this example, the auto server provides the IRD and exports several resources, one filtered network map and one filtered cost map, and all of them, both of them uses the same default network map. Sorry, this is a typo, and the filter cost map will also use the default network map. So both of the results use the same default network map, and we define a multiple resource and allow the client to query both of them in a single query, and it can enforce the data consistency and return the response also in a single query, also in a single message. So next page, please. So for the second case, we just use the same example shown in the patch vector document, but the IRD is a little different because the patch vector is just a special case. But for some common case, we want to mention that the media type, the type parameter in the media type, it just indicates the media type for the root part, and the capability should include the capabilities for the root part. Like in this case, it just need to include the cost type names. But for the response, the client may not know what the response looks like, and so it should explicitly export what's the layout of the multi-part response message. So in this example, the message should be include the two parts in the multi-part response message. The first one is a root part, is a cost map, and the second part is a property map. And for next page, please. Yeah. So in our previous revision, we already discussed the compatibility issues of some of the multi-part extensions, and the only remaining issue is how to support the incremental update extension. But fortunately, the latest incremental update document already changed and mentioned how to support it. And for the first case, the actual export is unnecessary because the current SSE document can already allow the client to subscribe multiple resources in the same request. But for the case 2 and case 3, we propose a similar process which is already followed by the patch vector extension and the current incremental update extension. So when the client subscribes a multi-part resource, as the first data update message, the server will return a full multi-part message, and then the server will subscribe the every subtree in this multi-part tree recursively. And after that, the server can publish the data update for each node in this multi-part tree individually. So that's a process we propose, and it's more like the guideline, but maybe the server can support a node. We consider it can be specified in the capability of the
Jensen, maybe 1 or 2 minutes because we have one more presentation and we are running towards the end. Can you
Sure.
finalize?
That's already the last page.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. So next step, we're finding some real examples which can benefit from the multiple extensions. So one potential example maybe we consider is a multi-domain application. The child will talk about this topic, and we will update the progress in the next revision. So we hope the working members can review and give some comments. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. I think the same goes as for the last presentation. If you have any comments, please do post them. And if you want to review this document, you're more than happy to welcome to do so. But please do that on the mailing list. We want to have time for one more presentation. So Jensen, thank you very much. For most part, we could hear you quite well. and see you. So this works quite well. I don't know, where are you right now? Oops, you're gone already. All right. So Kwao is next, presenting on multi-part use cases. So is he there? Yeah. So I hope that. All right. So I'm going to just try to get up your slides. Give me just 1 second.
Sure.
No, too many slides. This one, right? Okay. So I'm already moving to the second slide because the first one is just the header.
Yeah,
so please go ahead.
Yeah, hello everyone, this is Qiao. So the goal of this presentation on the corresponding draft is to give a review of important emerging multi-domain applications and show them how they can benefit from the Alto protocol. And after that, we'll describe a generic framework for these applications to use Alto to improve their performance. And then we'll discuss new design requirements for Alto to better support these applications. Next, please. So this is the goal of the Alto-based protocol. Basically, Alto-based protocol provide network information with the goal of modifying network resource consumption patterns while maintaining or improving application performance. And the information is exposed as an abstract map of network. And the typical use case is used in the base protocol is the P2P peer selection. Next slide, please. But with new architectures emerging and the new service function chaining and software-defined networking, and all these architecture and techniques are deployed in multi-domain networks. As such, new applications would emerge and these new applications can also benefit from Altos. So here is the incomplete list. So Danny has already talked about multi-domain end-to-end network service deployment. And in the past few IETFs, we have been summarizing our experience on developing multi-domain collaborative data science orchestration system using Alto. And also, we are also working on a new application called flexible interdomain routing control. So in the next few slides, I'm going to trying to quick review the second and third applications. Next, please. So for multi-domain collaborative data sciences, different organizations would contribute different resources to collaboratively collect, share, and analyze extremely large amounts of data. So the targeting example scenarios that we have been working on is the CMS experiment in the Large Hadron Collider. And we have designed a resource discover and orchestration system called Marketer to orchestrate large-scale dataset transfer between different CMS sets around the whole world. And in this system, we use Auto Cost Map and ECS service with path vector extensions to perform resource discovery. We also use the Auto SSE extensions and also cost calendar to push the increment update and also for future scheduling of the dataset transfers. We gave a demonstration at Supercomputing 18 last year at Dallas to orchestrate the transmission of a set of science workflows from Dallas to Pasadena at 100 gigabit per second. And our experience has been documented in previous drafts, which we will also plan to update shortly after this meeting. Next, please. And also, we have been working. Go back one more, maybe two more, please.
I'm trying to move ahead because we just have 2 more minutes. So I wonder how many slides you still have. I think it's too many.
Of course. Yeah. Can you go to slide number 10?
Sorry, which one do you want?
Slide number 11. Sorry, slide number 11. Yes.
All right.
So yeah. So there are different multi-domain applications that can benefit from Alto, but these applications also pose new design requirements for Alto to better support them. So here are also an incomplete list. It includes how to expose accurate information while preserving network privacy, and how to expose information of alternative resources so that the application can have more flexibility picking different resources, and also giving networks with additional business opportunities. And also it involves providing more generic interfaces for more flexible queries from application, and also provide a unified accurate representation of different types of resources to applications. Next slide, please.
Yeah, I think we're running out of time, so I'm going to go to the summary. Sorry, but
sure.
Yeah, we're running out of time.
Sure. Can you directly go back to the final slide, maybe? Right. So basically, just to quickly summarize, we have identified the different applications and that can benefit from Alto, and also new design requirements emerge. And in the working group, there also have been different drafts, both working group documents and personal drafts, being trying to be proposed to address some of the design requirements. So the next step we are going to do is to get feedback from the working group members and the industry partners, and then we'll systematically investigate the design to address all the design requirements and also the deployment concern of Alto for these applications, including stability, incentive, scalability, and privacy, and others. And by here, I hope, yeah, right. I finished. Thanks, Leah.
I'm sorry, I have to close now,
Sure.
but the same goes for all the individual presentations. If you have any comments, please comment on the mailing list, get in contact with the authors. Yes, so this closes our working group session today. I'm happy that we are making progress. I hope by Montreal we have further progress, and that we have certainly, I'm pretty sure we're going to have 2 more documents out of the working group, and maybe also 2 further ones, working group last calls finished, at least. That's our goal, so we're getting there. Actually, at this point in time, it's actually realistic that we are getting done with our milestones by Montreal or shortly after, which would be really great. Yes, so this closes our session. Thank you, everybody. The note takers, please send me an email with your notes, or me and Vijay. And yeah, see you in Montreal. I'm not sure if I can be there. I'll try, but Vijay said he's hopeful that he can be there and share the session. All right. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the week and the evening and live. I didn't say that. I wish everybody a good life.